In this video, we're going to be taking a look on pages Access 38 and 39, in which we're going to apply AND criteria. You can limit the number of records that appear on a query datasheet by entering criteria in the Query Design view. Criteria are test or limiting conditions for which the record must be true or be selected for the query datasheet. To create AND criteria, which means that all criteria must be true to select the record, enter two or more criteria on the same criteria row of the Query Design grid. So first of all, let's take a look at step 1 on page Access 38. And it tells us that we want to click on the Create tab on the ribbon. Then we want to click on the Query Design button, and that's in the Queries group. And then we're going to show some different tables. So we are going to double click the tours on here, and that's going to, or we can add the tours on here. And then we're going to click on close. So we're just going to work with our tours. Remember, you can drag this down so you can see more of the different fields. Now we want 4 fields from the tours table in this query. Of course, step 2 tells us that we can drag the bottom edge of the tours field down to display all the tours field, which we did that. And of course you can use your resizing handle here to do that. And then it tells us that we want to double click the tour name. That's going to put that in the first column there. Double click the duration. That's going to put that in the second column. Double click state abbrev. That's going to put that in the third column. And then double click category, and that's going to put that in the fourth column. And that's going to add those fields to the query grid. Now first, we're going to add criteria to select only those records in Florida. Now because you're using the state abbrev field, you will need to use the 2-letter state abbreviation for Florida as the criteria entry. So if we take a look on step 3, it tells us that we're going to click the first criteria cell for the state abbrev field, which is in column 3. And we're going to type in FL. And of course notice that it pops up a suggestion down here of the Florida Tours query, but ignore that for now. Once we do that, we're going to click the data sheet on here in the results group. And of course, once we see that on here, querying for only those tours in the state of Florida selects 9 records. Next, we're going to add criteria to select only the tours in Florida in the adventure category. So we're going to go back and click on our datasheet view, or not our datasheet view, but our design view here. And then we're going to click the first criteria cell for the category field. Now when we keep it all on the same row here, this is adding in AND criteria. So it has to be in Florida and be in adventure for us. So when we do this, we're going to type in the word adventure. And this is still in on step 4. And then we're going to click the view button in the results group. And of course now we have criteria added to the same line of the query design grid, which are AND criteria. When entered on the same line, each criterion must be true for the record to appear in the resulting datasheet. Querying for both Florida and adventure tours narrows the selection to 5 records. Every time you add AND criteria, you narrow the number of records that are selected because the record must be true for all criteria. Next, on step 5, we click on our design view button again. And then it tells us that we want to click the first criteria cell for the duration field, which is in the second column there. And then we're going to click, or we're going to type in the greater than or equal to 7. And this is telling us on here, in this case, that we are going to want the duration to be greater than or equal to 7 on there. Now of course Access assists you with criteria and syntax rules on there. And of course this specifies how to enter criteria. Access automatically adds quotation marks around criteria or text criteria in short text, and long text fields. So if we notice that in FL and in adventure, it put quotation marks around it. Now, it's going to add pound signs around date criteria in the date and time fields. The criteria in number, currency, and yes/no fields are not surrounded by any characters. And of course, you can take a look on page Access 39 on table B-4 for more information about comparison operators such as greater than or less than. So in this case, this is going to be less than or equal to that's on there. So we want less than or equal to 7 in our duration. Once we have that, we're going to click on our view button again, and we'll now notice that on here that the third and criteria further narrows the number of records selected to 4. So we went from 9, and then we've bumped it down a little bit more, and now we're at 4 records. Once we have this on there, we want to go ahead and save this. Of course, if you do run into some trouble, if your data sheet does not match this on here, you want to return to the query design view and compare your criteria to this right here. So you want to make sure that you have less than or equal to 7 in the duration, FL as the state abbreviation, and adventure as the category. Now, if it's misspelled or if it's not written correctly, you will not get the results that you're looking for. So you do have to make sure that it is very precise on what you're looking for. Once we have this, we're going to click on the Save button in the Quick Access toolbar up here. And for the query name, we're going to type in Adventure FL as the query name, and we're going to click on OK. And of course, you'll notice that that's been added to our list of queries here. And then we can close down our query. Now the query is saved with the new name Adventure FL as a new object in the Quest Travel B database. Criteria entered in the query design view are permanently saved with the query. Now, as compared with filters in the previous lesson, which are temporary and not saved with the object. So if you're constantly wanting to keep up with this on there, because if we remember, filters will be deleted when you close down your table or query. However, when you create a query, that's permanently going to be there. So if I would open up the Adventure FL again, that's constantly going to be there. So when I add that criteria, that's always going to be there. And if I would add more tours or more information, that's always going to be there. However, if I'd open back up my tours again, notice that my filters are not there. So that is one thing to kind of keep in mind. So we're going to close all those out together. And if you take a look on the bottom of page 39, it talks about searching for blank fields. And of course, that's one thing that in Access that you do need to pay attention to. And of course, you'll notice that there's some terms there, is null and is not null. And those are two other types of common criteria. The is null, and that is N-U-L-L, criterion finds all records where no entry has been made in the field. Is not null finds all records where there is any entry in the field, even if the entry is 0. Now, of course, one thing you need to remember that primary key fields cannot have a null entry. So if you set a primary key field, and you will probably notice it will have an error if it does not have information into it. And that concludes the information on pages Access 38 and 39. In the next video, we're going to be talking about applying OR criteria.